All right, there we go. I believe we are officially live. Let's see. Yes, we are. Okay, cool. What is up, everybody? Wonderbro here with Vacate Fear. So yesterday we had an amazing stream. It was great. We talked a lot about fear. We talked a lot about how your mind's always going to the next thing, the next thing, the what ifs, and how this keeps the stress cycle alive, right? How you always tend to fall into that temptation to entertain these thoughts rather than feel these thoughts, allow these thoughts to be, and not fuel them. So, yesterday was a great stream. Today's stream is going to kind of be like a follow up, a little bit in a way. The title of today's stream is You Will Be Tempted by Your Mind, because I know a lot of people out there, like a lot of people, understand what we're saying when we say not to entertain these fearful thoughts, when we break down fear and we talk about how fear is ultimately an illusion, how it's always about what's next or what might happen, not what is currently happening, right? So I know a lot of people understand that concept, but there's a lot of people that still fall victim, right, to the temptation to get involved with these thoughts. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Let's see if I have one second. See if I have any other channel news for you guys. Any other channel news for you today? Um, Other than the new slides, which most people are already familiar with, I believe we're good. So we're just going to give it a few minutes and let some people get in here, and then we'll get going. Then we'll get started. Temptation. Oof, it's a good one. Let's see, did we notify? Yeah, we did. We're good. We notified the Discord. Also, guys, I always try to drop that Discord link every time we start a stream for that reason. For that reason, I know a lot of people miss out on the YouTube notifications. For some reason, the YouTube notifications are so fashionably late, and I don't know why. I don't know why. A lot of people get let down by those YouTube notifications. So, YouTube, not the best to rely on to get notified when you want to join the streams. Your best bet's probably to join us over on the Discord. That is why, one of the reasons why it is there, so we can notify everybody before we start streaming. All right, guys. Let me see. Get rid of that. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. All right. All right. All right. All right. Let's see here. Guys, we are so close to 10K. We are so close to 10K, it is ridiculous. Like right around the corner. I believe we're almost halfway. Where are we sitting at? 9,425. Yeah, we are almost halfway. Exciting stuff. Arnold, what's up, dude? Alright, you guys. Let's go ahead and switch on over to our main. Let's see here. Okay, get comments pulled up. You will be tempted by your mind, the topic of today's stream. So, yesterday, like I said, yesterday we had a stream about fear. We went into a little bit of detail, or a lot of detail rather, about how fear is always, some sort of thought form. As Dr. Claire Weeks likes to call it, second fear. Now, when Dr. Claire Weeks says second fear, the first fear that she is referring to is anxiety, right? Anxiety, fear, more or less the same thing. But here's the thing that I want you guys to understand. Here's the very important thing that I want you guys to understand. You can have anxiety symptoms, right? You can have anxiety symptoms without the fear. And this is what Claire Weeks meant by second fear. So, yes, it is true that anxiety and fear are more or less the same thing, but at the same time, there needs to be a little bit of a separation, I believe, because you can experience anxiety symptoms without adding fear to them, right? So, I believe in my mind there needs to be a little bit of a separation there. And we talked about this yesterday on the Facebook page. We made an excellent post over on the Facebook page. What is up, everybody in chat? We made an excellent post over on the Facebook page talking about how you can experience, right? You can experience anxiety symptoms, but you don't have to fear them. And this is what, again, this is what Claire Weeks meant by second fear. And now some people say, well, that's just not true because anxiety and fear, they're the same exact thing. And although they are very similar, right? Claire Weeks meant this by second fear. You do not have to fear your anxiety symptoms. So we made the example yesterday on the Facebook page. It was a great example. We made the example how you can have two people, right? And person A has their anxiety symptoms that they fear, and person B has their anxiety symptoms that they fear, and person A only wishes that they could exchange or somehow trade their anxiety symptoms with person B. So I think that's proof in itself, right? That's proof in itself that what we fear comes down to the thoughts that we're entertaining. We all have our particular little fears, our specific little fears that kind of drive the fear cycle. Some people fear these symptoms and other people fear these symptoms. It's more or less the same for everybody, but if you'll notice that there's a lot of people in chat that say, oh, this symptom drives me crazy, right? I'm so afraid of this symptom. And then you'll have somebody else who says, oh, well, that symptom doesn't really bother me that much, but let me tell you about this symptom. And then the other person will come back and say, oh, well, that symptom doesn't really bother me that much, but let me tell you about this symptom, right? So it's kind of a personal journey. It's true that everybody in the sensitized boat is pretty much in the same boat, but at the same time, it's proof that people have their own fears based on the fearful thoughts that they entertain. So, for example, you guys, if you've watched my videos for a while, you guys know that one of my biggest fears was going crazy, losing my mind because of the adrenaline. Right? I hated that adrenaline feeling. I just couldn't seem to overcome that adrenaline feeling. And it's because I was entertaining fearful thoughts about going crazy due to the symptom, right? So you can experience symptoms without fear. And this is what Claire Weeks meant about eliminating second fear. And how do you eliminate second fear? You start to become more mindful of what fearful thoughts you're entertaining, right? And then we start to create that gap and we stop entertaining those thoughts. Now, again, another example. There's plenty of people out there that I've ran into that I've spoke to personally that will say, oh, well, the adrenaline never bothered me that much. It was this symptom that bothered me, right? So it just kind of goes to show you, your fears are personal. It's going to come down to what fearful thoughts you're entertaining, but it's all an illusion, right? So your fears are personal, but they are an illusion. And, I know this is we haven't really touched on the main point of the stream just yet, but this all kind of plays together. So the main point of the stream is you will be tempted by your mind, right? So whether you're person A, who's afraid of the adrenaline, or whether you're person B, who is entertaining fearful thoughts about your heart, whatever person you are on the spectrum, it doesn't matter because it's all the same root problem, which is the temptation by your mind to entertain these fearful thoughts, right? So the main point of this is to make people understand that you can experience anxiety symptoms without the added fear. Okay, and again, I know I've already said this several times, but this is what Dr. Claire Weeks meant by second fear. She even has a quote somewhere, I've got it somewhere on my computer, says something like, sensitization is not enough. A body can quickly repair itself if it's not for the fear. So again, even though she calls it first and second fear, even in her own words, she's pretty much telling you directly that there is a difference, that there is a separation there, that you can be sensitized, and I'll see if I can pull up the exact quote. I've got it somewhere here, that you can be sensitized but not be adding fear. So she says sensitization alone is not enough because without fear, a body will quickly repair its sensitized state. So even in her own words there, she's pretty much directly telling you that you can experience anxiety symptoms, okay, and not be in a state of full-blown fear. And this is really the key to healing, okay? And that's why I like to say, so where does this fear come from? If Dr. Claire Weeks is saying, sensitization is not enough, if there's not fear, a body can quickly repair itself. Where does this, fear come from? If this is the case, where does this fear come from? And that is the main point of today's stream. You will be tempted by your mind because that fear is coming from the mind. The fear is coming from the mind. And that's why we made the examples of person A and person B fearing different symptoms. It all comes back to what thoughts that you are entertaining, right? So if we know this to be true, how do we start to eliminate this fear? Okay, first and foremost, we need to understand we're not trying to eliminate anxiety. We're trying to eliminate the fear of anxiety. We're trying to eliminate the fear aspect, right? Because, again, Dr. Claire Weeks tells you pretty much directly right there in that quote, sensitization is not enough. Without fear, a body can repair itself. So now that we understand that there's a difference there, and now that we understand what the root problem is, this fear, and now that we understand that this fear is coming from the mind, what do we do about it? A lot of people will say at this point, well, I can't stop my thoughts from coming. Well, you can't, because they're pretty much concrete at this point, but they will soon start to lose their grip if you stop entertaining them, which is one of our two main keys, right? Accept the feelings, okay, and leave those thoughts alone. This is how you heal. This is the two main keys in a nutshell. So now that we know fear is the culprit behind keeping you sensitized, now that we know that you can experience symptoms without fear, how do we eliminate the fear? It's all up here. So, you know, we've talked a ton about negative thoughts and how this, is the root cause of your fear, and the fact that you need to leave these negative, intrusive, fearful thoughts alone. But some people still, have a bit of difficulty with this. And this leads me into our main point of the stream. You will be tempted by your mind. So, let's say you watch a bunch of my videos, you watch a bunch of my streams, and you're like, okay, I'm totally on board with this. It makes sense. But you wake up tomorrow having a bad day. You wake up tomorrow and these thoughts are just full force. You can't seem to not think them. You can't seem to, get a break from them. Understand this. We're not telling you to do the impossible. We're not telling you to wake up tomorrow and not experience any fearful thoughts ever again. Okay? These thoughts have become almost habit for you. But what we are telling you is to become more aware of when this is happening. So there's what you could call, Moji calls it a mind attack going on, right? You have these fearful thoughts. What we want you to do is not the impossible. We don't want you to try to shut them down, right? Okay, they will leave on their own if you remove the fuel. So what we want you to do is remove the fuel. How do you remove the fuel? Okay, becoming aware. Aware that the thought is there. Okay, there's that fearful thought. That's what's causing my fear. I can experience anxiety and sensitization symptoms without fear, but there's that thought causing that fear. Okay, so even Dr. Claire Weeks says it herself. Sensitization is not enough. Okay, without fear, the body can quickly repair itself. Dan says, but isn't fear a substance like stress hormones? Fear adds to it. Fear releases, okay, these substances, right? So even Dr. Claire Weeks says you can be in a sensitized state with sensitized symptoms, with anxiety symptoms, but if you're not adding what she calls second fear, all right, you're not going to continue the stress on top of stress, the fear on top of fear cycle. Your nerves can never catch a break if you live in this way. So fear thoughts rise up, and fear does cause a reaction in the body, right? But whether or not we entertain those thoughts are going to determine whether or not those thoughts have full control, whether or not those thoughts continue to grow, whether or not those thoughts continue to keep us in the fear boat, right? So this is what we mean by leave your thoughts alone. A thought can come, and it can cause whatever it wants to cause in the body. However, if we remove the fuel from that by not entertaining that, slowly these thoughts will lose their grip on us. Now, a lot of people are still very tempted by this because we talked yesterday about how fear is basically your mind's way of trying to get you to prevent something from happening. But it's never actually here, right? It's always about what's around the corner or what's the next thing, right? So fear is always your mind's way of trying to get you to prevent something from happening. And that's why it's so tempting. That's why it's so tempting to get involved with these thoughts, because you've convinced yourself that if you don't, something bad is going to happen, right? Nothing bad ever happens, but you stay stuck in this cycle. Fearful thoughts, you entertain them because you're under the false belief that something bad will happen to you over your anxiety and panic if you do not do something about these thoughts or take them seriously, right? So people take them very, very seriously. Of course, all of this does is lead to the stress on stress cycle, the fear on fear cycle. So, again, and you're probably sick of hearing me reference Dr. Claire Weeks at this point. But again, sensitization alone is not enough, because without fear, a body will quickly repair its sensitized state. So there's a bit of a separation there, okay? You can experience sensitized symptoms, you can experience anxiety symptoms, but without fear, she plainly says it right here, without fear, a body will quickly repair its sensitized state. So you need to be aware, okay, that by entertaining these fearful thoughts, you are keeping the cycle alive. By entertaining these fearful thoughts, you are keeping your body in a state of stress. And you also need to be aware that I know you're going to be very, very tempted. You're going to be very, very tempted to entertain these thoughts because you believe they are keeping you safe, right? You believe that somehow these fearful thoughts are telling you that you need to prevent something from happening. Therefore, you listen. Therefore, you listen and you give them a lot of your attention. You give them a lot of your involvement. But again, you're being bluffed. Okay, you are falling for the illusion. You are falling for the fear on top of fear. Cycle. You are falling for the stress on top of stress. Cycle. Now, there's no denying that these fearful thoughts, okay, bring their own feelings in the body. This is true, and this is the whole point. These fearful thoughts continue to bring these feelings in the body, and that is why your body can never catch a break long enough to heal, okay? So I understand that. I understand that it's easier said than done. I understand that you're very, very tempted, okay? I get it. You're very tempted for those two reasons. You believe that you need to listen up because something bad might happen if you won't. You believe that you need to listen up because these fearful thoughts bring these feelings in the body, right? But the longer you entertain this fearful way of thinking, the longer you entertain these negative, fearful thoughts, okay, the less likely it is that your body can catch a break. Now, with that being said, okay, with that being said, I don't want anyone to think, oh, well, if I just continue to entertain these fearful thoughts day after day after day after day, I'll never get out of this cycle. That's more fearful thinking. That's more fearful thinking, right? So it's easy to get caught up. It's easy to continue to tell yourself horror stories. It's easy to continue to entertain these fearful thoughts, but understand that we have to eventually get to the point where we can practice letting go of them more and more. Now, that doesn't mean they're eventually instantly rather going to fade. They will eventually. That doesn't mean that instantly you're going to just heal your sensitized nerves. However, this does mean that you're starting to put a stop to the cycle, right? I know it's tempting to get involved with these thoughts, but let these feelings play out. I know it's tempting to get involved with these thoughts, but let them play out, right? Do not entertain them. They are lying to you. So, again, I'll finish the main point of this stream by quoting Dr. Clear Weeks one more time. I know you're probably sick of hearing the same quote over and over, but it's so important that it starts to seep in. Sensitization alone is not enough, because without fear, a body will quickly repair its sensitized state. And there's no denying that. Because, like we said in our example at the beginning of this stream, you can have person A who's very fearful and has a lot of fearful thoughts over their symptom of adrenaline. And then you can have person B who's very fearful over their symptom of a heart. Person A thinks the heart symptom is child's play. Person B thinks the adrenaline symptom is child's play. See, it's personal. It all comes down to what fearful thoughts you're entertaining. And therefore, it is an illusion. Right? It's a personal illusion that you got to wake up from. It's a personal illusion that you got to wake up from. So that's proof in itself. You can experience an anxiety symptom and not have fear over it. Okay? You can experience an anxiety symptom and not have fear over it. That's why some people fear certain symptoms and other people fear other symptoms, but they don't fear the other symptoms that the other person fears. Right? It's all just a personal illusion that you got to wake up from. You got to start to release these fearful thoughts that you've been holding on to and entertaining for so long, no matter how tempting it might be. You've got to realize the illusion, right? All right, you guys. So that was the main point of today's stream. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you've been here for a while, you already know what time it is. It's time for post stream, where we hang out with chat, where we talk to chat, relax, chill, and yeah, just strike up conversation. So we're gonna read the chat, see who we missed. Michael, what's up? Victoria, Olivia, Denise, hello everybody. Hello. Let me light this cigarette right here. Okay. And we were talking in the Discord, what was it, a few days ago or something? I lose track of time very easily. We were talking a few days ago or something in the Discord about, you know, fear being an illusion that's based on these thoughts that you're entertaining, right? Because if you were truly present and not entertaining these thoughts, there wouldn't be room for fear, because fear is born in the mind. So you can experience anxiety symptoms without the fear. This is what Dr. Claire Weeks calls second fear. We made an example in the Discord the other day. I don't want to give anybody's name or anything like that, but somebody was talking about how they were suffering with a lot of fear due to their dry mouth, right? Which is understandable. But I tried to get them to wake up to this illusion by giving a personal example from my own experience. Now, in my own experience, a dry mouth, which I did experience, the dry mouth, the tight throat, right, that choking feeling, I experienced that from time to time, but it easily was let go of because I did not entertain fearful thoughts about it, right? Because I had no fearful thoughts about it that I was getting involved with. Instead, my fearful thoughts, okay, and my involvement was aimed at my symptoms of adrenaline, right? Because I thought I was going to go crazy due to it. Therefore, I entertained the shit out of it, right? So what we tried to do is try to get this person to realize the illusion here. So how come when I was in my sensitized journey, I thought the whole choking and dry mouth and tight throat thing was a complete joke compared to the adrenaline, but how come they think it's not a complete joke and it's the, the end all, right? It all comes down to your personal choice of what negative, fearful thoughts you are entertaining, right? So again, that kind of goes to show you that it is an illusion based on what fearful negative thoughts that you wish to entertain. You can experience an anxiety symptom without the fear, and that's why I was able to experience the tight throat without the fear, but they weren't. And that's why person B was able to experience the adrenaline without the fear, but I wasn't, right? So it really comes down to what type of thoughts you're entertaining, what your particular fears are, and learning how to leave these thoughts alone. Learning how to leave these thoughts alone. I got to turn on an air conditioner today because, Jesus, it is warm in here. It is warm in here, chat. All right, chat. I'll be right back. I'm going to have a potty break. Potty break. All right, we are back, chat. Quick little potty break there. Can you remind us how to not entertain fearful thoughts? So, the fearful thoughts come, right? And you need to let them play out just like you let the feelings come out. And this is eventually how you start to let go of these fearful thoughts. So, the fearful thoughts are there and they're saying whatever they want to say, and the feelings are there, they're saying whatever they want to say, and you're letting them completely play out without trying to get involved, without trying to shut them off. And this is eventually how you lose the fear of the feelings and ultimately the fearful thoughts, right? You start to allow yourself to experience these feelings and allow your mind to say, do this instead, do this instead, take this precaution, and make sure you shut this feeling down because this might happen. And you start to allow these feelings and thoughts to really play themselves out. And this is how you eventually come to the realization, wow, I don't need to hang on to these fearful thoughts anymore. I don't need to hang on to these fearful thoughts anymore because I'm starting to prove to myself day in and day out by accepting the feelings and living life and letting the thoughts just be there without entertaining them, that nothing bad ever truly happens. My fears are based on illusion, right? So when we say leave your fearful thoughts alone, we're not telling you to shout at the top of your lungs and shut them down as soon as they roll around. We're telling you to allow this to play out, to allow these feelings to play out, to allow these thoughts to play out so that you can see for yourself that it's a bluff. Right. So if, I'll use my own story as an example. Let's say, back in the day, I had that fear of going insane or crazy due to the adrenaline. Right. So I really hated panic attacks. And honestly, I ended up in the sensitized boat due to my hatred of panic attacks. It's kind of ironic. I didn't experience many panic attacks while sensitized, right? But due to this driving fear, and it's all personal, like I said, whatever your fear is, due to this driving fear of my panic attacks or adrenaline or energy or whatever you want to call it, making me go crazy or insane or somehow losing control of myself, due to this entertainment of this particular fear, I ended up in the sensitized boat, right? And then while I was in the sensitized boat, I continued to fight every thought that came along in order to avoid my ultimate fear of going crazy or insane or whatever the case may be, right? So every thought that would come up, I would combat it so that I wouldn't have a panic attack because I was so afraid of the panic attacks. I was so afraid of the rising adrenaline and energy. So it was fight every thought, fight every feeling, do whatever I could to do to shut it all down. But in doing so, kept myself in a very stressed out place, kept myself ultimately in the sensitized nervous system. So when we say leave your thoughts and feelings alone, we simply mean let them play out, right? So if your feelings are going to do this, that's fine. If your thoughts are going to do this, that's fine too. You need to prove to yourself that you're being bluffed by letting it play out. So you have these fearful thoughts that come. If you want them to lose their grip over you, stop entertaining, just let them play out. You have these feelings come. If you want them to lose their control over you, stop entertaining, just let them play out, right? Realize when you're up in the head entertaining these fearful thoughts, and instead just let them play out. Let whatever's going to happen happen. Realize when you're trying to run from these feelings, and instead just let them play out. Well, let whatever's going to happen happen. This is how you eventually break through the wall. This is how you eventually break down the bluff, right? This is how you eventually break down the bluff. So you know, I fought and I fought and I fought and I fought all these thoughts, and I fought and I fought and I fought, and it was all because I was trying to avoid something that didn't actually exist, aka adrenaline causing me to lose my mind, which makes no logical sense now, but at the time it felt very real to me, right? So I would fight and I would fight and I would fight these thoughts and feelings, fight and I'd fight and I'd fight, trying to avoid some sort of drastic outcome, and this fight did nothing but keep me in the stressed out, sensitized boat, right? So you have to allow these feelings to play out. You have to allow these thoughts to play out. Prove to yourself that you're being bluffed, right? Um, so, again, it comes down to you're tempted to fight because you think you're protecting yourself from something, but all of this fight, all it's doing is keeping you in the sensitized boat, right? It's so tempting to fight because you believe you are protecting yourself from something, but if you never allow yourself to go there and let these thoughts and feelings play out without getting involved, then you never really prove to yourself that you're being bluffed. Right, so that's another good way to put that there. The fear is born in the mind, so you get these symptoms, right? Otherwise harmless symptoms, but you get these fearful thoughts that something bad might happen because of them, and because of that, you entertain these thoughts and you fight these feelings, and then you end up in the stressed out, sensitized boat, right? So it's very tempting to do that because you are absolutely convinced that something's bad is going to happen if you don't, and therefore you keep yourself in the stress on stress cycle, the fear on top of fear cycle, which is what Dr. Claire Weeks meant. Again, by sensitization alone is not enough. Without fear, the body can repair itself, right? Without fear, the body can repair itself. So, so in order to lose, this fear, you have to realize that you're doing what you're doing because you think you're protecting yourself. You're doing what you're doing because you think you're protecting yourself from a very bad outcome. But you got to stop trying to protect yourself from this quote unquote bad outcome because it's all based on fearful thoughts. It's all an illusion. You got to let these thoughts play out, let these feelings come out. You really got to start to live by the whole whatever happens, happens, right? You really got to start to live by the whole whatever happens, happens. Stop trying to, stop getting up there and getting involved with these fearful thoughts, and instead just remind yourself, hey, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. I've got to release this resistance, right? And I've got to get over my fear. Right? And how do you get over your fear? You allow these thoughts and feelings to play out so that you can see for yourself that when you don't get involved, nothing happens. But when you do get involved, you keep yourself in the stress cycle, right? I think what was it the other day? We talked about how this kind of feels like a leap of faith for some people. And I get that. I get how it could feel like a leap of faith, right? Because it's, it's you thinking that, okay, if I let go, something really bad's going to happen. So, of course, it might feel like a bit of a leap of faith. I get it. But you got to take that leap of faith. It's either that or stay stuck in the entertaining fear on top of fear and living in this illusion, right? Take that leap of faith, and of course, while you're taking this leap of faith, understand if you are entertaining these negative thoughts, if you are trying to fight these feelings, that you're just keeping yourself stuck in the illusion, right? So taking that quote unquote leap of faith involves letting go of trying to fight the thoughts, letting go of trying to fight the feelings, so that you can prove to yourself that you are being bluffed, right? Craig sent a $25 tip. Craig, thank you so much for that, dude. Can we get a round of applause in the chat for Craig? Craig, thank you, man. I appreciate it. How you doing, Face Paints? Good to see you. Good to see you. Yeah, I dealt with very poor sleep. I think anybody in the sensitized boat deals with poor sleep. It's honestly, it's just part of the package deal. I don't know very many people who are in the sensitized state that don't have to deal with poor sleep. So it's nothing out of the ordinary. Let your mind race. Let your feelings do what they will. If you continue to fight, you continue to keep yourself in the illusion. If you want to break through the illusion, let your mind race. Let your feelings come. Don't try to stop them. When you try to stop them, this is involvement. What is involvement? Involvement is second fear. Involvement implies that there is a problem. Involvement implies that there is a real danger. And this keeps the brain on high alert, right? This keeps the thoughts sticky. This keeps everything fueled. So it's about letting go. It is about letting go. And what helps people to let go is to remember that if they want to break out of the fear illusion, that the fighting has done nothing for them. So that's an important one to remember for people to use that in their little toolbox, as Dr. Claire Weeks calls, reminding yourself the correct inner voice. So, that's a little important reminder to remind yourself of. How far has this fighting got me? I can't live like this forever. If I want to break through the illusion of fear, I've got to allow my mind to race, to allow my body to feel, and I've got to prove to myself that I am being bluffed. And you can't prove to yourself that you're being bluffed as long as you're fighting, because you fighting is keeping you in the bluff. It's keeping you in the bluff. You have to give yourself permission to allow these thoughts and feelings to come, and remind yourself whatever happens, happens. It feels like a leap of faith. I know it feels like a leap of faith. And just like the title of this stream says, you're going to be tempted to get involved. You're going to be tempted to get involved, right? But allow these feelings to come. Allow these thoughts to come and see what happens if you do this every single day. Start to see what happens. See if you don't start to wake up out of the illusion. See if you don't start to wake up. It is the fight that's keeping you in the sensitized boat. It's the fight that's adding stress on top of stress and fear on top of fear. We can talk about the specifics all day long, but if you want to get to the bare bones minimum of what we've always been trying to say, then we would simply put it like this. If you allow yourself to feel, if you allow whatever thoughts to come and whatever feelings to come without trying to stop them, you will wake up out of the illusion of fear and you will start to heal your body. Now, this feels like a giant leap of faith, but you must ask yourself, how long have you been fighting and how far has the fight gotten you? That's what you need to ask yourself, right? Right, right, right. Right, right, right. Because that fight is keeping you there. No, Arnold, not yet, man. Not yet. So let's give a more specific example. Let's say, I have a lot of fearful thoughts, but all these fearful thoughts are me trying to avoid anxiety and panic. Well then, okay, let's break it down here. So, do you really care about these fearful thoughts, or are they more or less based on you trying to stop the anxiety and panic cycle, right? 9 times out of 10, if you're fighting with fearful thoughts and entertaining them, you're trying to stop the anxiety and panic cycle. Well, let's make it even more simple. Why are you trying to stop the anxiety and panic cycle? You're trying to stop the anxiety and panic cycle because you are afraid of what might happen, okay, due to these symptoms. You are afraid of the symptoms, right? So a lot of people get a bit confused. They're like, oh, well, my fearful thoughts are about this, Wonder Bro. They're not about anxiety and panic symptoms. But let's break it down and let's be honest. And you might be right, but just hear me out. let's break it down and let's be brutally honest with ourselves. Your fearful thoughts might not be directly about your anxiety and panic symptoms, but yet you still fight these fearful thoughts. Why do you do that? Is it because maybe somewhere underneath the surface you're afraid that these fearful thoughts, because they are causing you a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of panic, you want them to go away so badly? Why do you want them to go away so badly? Let's be honest with ourselves. Are you trying to avoid the anxiety and panic? Right? So you get what I'm getting at. A lot of times, if we break it down even further, we see that even though our thoughts are not necessarily aimed, some of them are not necessarily aimed at anxiety and panic, and some of them might be. But for those ones that are not directly aimed at anxiety and panic, you still fight them because they cause you anxiety and panic. So you're not fighting them because of them. You're fighting them because you're trying to avoid some sort of anxiety and panic, right? So that kind of tells us, if we keep breaking it down and keep breaking it down, you're still afraid of anxiety and panic symptoms. And that is the case for most people. I'm not going to speak for everybody, but that is the case for most people. Your root cause, your root problem, your root fear is the anxiety and panic symptoms. So for a lot of people, that is the case. So understand that fighting and entertaining the thoughts is getting you nowhere. Let's take it a step further, break it down a little bit further, and we'll kind of see that for most people, 99% of the time, the case is they fight their thoughts, whatever their thoughts might be about, because they're afraid of the anxiety and panic that these thoughts cause, right? So if we break it down for most people, 9 times out of 10, it's because said person is afraid of their anxiety and panic symptoms. Why are they afraid of their anxiety and panic symptoms? Because they have very fearful beliefs or thoughts that they entertain about their anxiety and panic symptoms, right? So my main point here is that most people are in the state that they're in because they are still afraid of their anxiety and panic symptoms. What is the only way to start to overcome the fear of the anxiety and panic symptoms? To feel them, right? To feel them in an unrestricted way. So when we say unrestricted way, we mean to allow yourself, to give yourself permission to feel these feelings, right? And over time, you'll start to break your fearful beliefs about them down, which is what Dr. Claire Weeks means by second fear. So getting into the specifics and the details with your thoughts is not really helping anything, and that's, one of the many reasons why one of the two main keys is to leave your thoughts alone, right? It's not really helping anything, and it's adding a lot of fear. You're living in this illusion of fear. Um, so again, there's a million reasons why one of the two main keys is to leave your negative thoughts alone, but that's a big one right there. 9 times out of 10, you're doing this, you're fighting your fearful thoughts because you don't want anxiety and panic to come into the picture if you don't do said thing or take care of said thing, yada, 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 yada. So again, one of the many reasons why leaving your negative, fearful thoughts alone is one of our two main keys, right? That is one of our many reasons. So, if you're honest with yourself, you'll see that most of the time your root fears that you're afraid of anxiety and panic symptoms. Okay, and if this is you, then the only way that you can start to overcome that root fear and start to catch some relief is to lose your fear of the anxiety and panic symptoms. And how do you do that? By allowing yourself to feel them unrestricted. Okay, allowing yourself to feel them unrestricted. So, again, that's just one of the many reasons why we say leaving your thoughts alone is one of our two main keys. One of the many reasons. Feel like I'm going crazy. So there's your root fear right there. This is why you fight your thoughts. This is why you add stress on top of stress and fear on top of fear. So the only way we're really going to be able to do this or get over this is to kind of get over our fear of going crazy or losing your mind due to anxiety and panic symptoms. Now, anxiety and panic symptoms cannot make you lose your mind or go crazy. But until you prove that to yourself, you're always going to have that kind of like in the back of your mind, right? So how do you prove that to yourself? By allowing yourself to feel, okay, unrestricted, by starting to see these symptoms for what they are, right? By starting to see them for what they are and just living your life while they're there, living your life while they are there, and stop trying to stop them, just live your life, right? Did I ever have brain tumor anxiety? No, not personally. I didn't have a lot of health anxiety. I know some people do. For me, it was more of a sanity thing, but right, it's all the same boat. It's all that we have this underlying fear of something happening due to the anxiety and panic symptoms, and we need to break through that fear by allowing ourselves to feel unrestricted, by stop entertaining the negative thoughts. They're not important anyway, they're not relevant anyway. We can give you a million reasons why entertaining the negative thoughts is not important or something you should even invest energy in, and just allowing yourself to break through these false beliefs, these false fears, by allowing yourself to feel, right, and looking at these opportunities to do that. Looking at these feelings as an opportunity to do that. I mean, that's really why we have so many streams about thoughts, because there's so many reasons why entertaining your negative thoughts is not a good idea. We could say, well, because it's not the root problem anyway. You're secretly trying to avoid anxiety and panic. So let's allow ourselves to feel anxiety and panic and break down these false beliefs that we have about anxiety and panic, and finally face it without adding second fear for the first time, and kind of build on that. Okay? Or we can say it's not a good idea to entertain fearful thoughts because the body sees them as a real danger, so you're just hurting yourself in the end. Or we can say it's not a good idea to entertain fearful thoughts because you're just causing them to grow, and you're just causing fuel to be added to the fire and making them stronger, right? So there's a million reasons that we can give you why entertaining your negative, fearful thoughts is not a good idea. And honestly, that's why we have so many streams, because there is so many reasons why that's not a good idea. But I know it's tempting. So the main point of this stream was that it's very tempting to do that. Regardless of all these reasons, it's very tempting to get involved. It's very tempting to get involved with the mind. Even though we can and have done hundreds of streams on why it's not a good idea, it's still very tempting. And that was the main point of this stream. Temptation's going to be there, right? Temptation's going to be there. Temptation is definitely going to be there. It's definitely going to be there to get involved with the mind. It's definitely going to be there, and that was the main point of today's stream. So don't feel guilty if you've got that temptation to fight still there. We're slowly starting to release that, right? We're slowly starting to release that. As Dr. Claire Weeks beautifully says, Dr. Claire Weeks, sensitization is not enough. Without fear, the body will start to repair itself. So we need to break through these fears by allowing our minds to say whatever they want without entertaining them, to allow our feelings to come without trying to fight them for the first time, right? We start to break down and break through these old fears and these old beliefs by allowing them to be, no longer entertaining these fearful thoughts, and really starting to tackle these fears by allowing ourselves to feel, right? Beautifully said, the OG Dr. Claire Weeks here. Beautifully said. And that's fine, Dan. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's allowed to go at their own pace, right? Everybody's allowed to go at their own pace. Nobody is nobody is forced to go at any certain pace, right? It's really up to you. So I just kind of point the way. I just kind of point the way. We talk about Dr. Claire Weeks. We talk about second fear acceptance, breaking through these fears, no longer entertaining these thoughts, allowing ourselves to feel, breaking down these old beliefs, right? But at the end of the day, everybody's allowed to go at their own pace. Everybody's their own person. Everybody is absolutely allowed to go at their own pace, and that's why we do not shame people for going at their own pace. If Dan feels like he needs medication to slowly get himself out of this hole, then that is fine. And if somebody else feels like they don't want to take medication, they want to go the non-medication route, that's fine too. That's a personal choice, and everybody's allowed to go at their own pace. So don't feel guilty about that, Dan. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. So it's like, when I had the fear of going crazy or insane due to my adrenaline, one of the first steps I took was no longer entertaining the thought of going crazy, obviously. And the second step I took, which this is the two main keys in a nutshell, the second step I took was the acceptance, allowing myself to feel that adrenaline and that energy, and to allow myself to be with it and see what happens, right? See what happens for myself instead of running away from it all the time, right? So that's the two main keys in a nutshell. Entertaining the fearful negative thoughts will get you nowhere, and it's really, really pointless, and there's a million reasons why it's pointless. So just drop that, and instead let's focus on breaking down these false beliefs and these false fears by allowing yourself to feel and see what happens, right? Alright guys, I'm just clicking through some pages here. Get everything updated for the day. Get everything updated for the day. I love that quote by Dr. Claire Weeks, man. I know you guys are sick of hearing it, but sensitization alone is not enough. Without fear, a body can repair itself. What is fear? Fear is the fearful things that you believe are going to happen due to your anxiety and panic. So let's break down those fears. Let's break through those false beliefs and prove to ourselves that we can and that we will, right? So no more horror stories. No more buying into the horror stories. Let's break through these false beliefs, these false fears. Let's gain that confidence. Let's gain that confidence. And sometimes, that's not a process that is as quick as we would like it to be, and that's okay. Day by day, breaking through the false beliefs. Day by day, breaking through the false fears. Oh, of course, Arnold. If you allow yourself to feel, obviously you're taking down your guard, right? You're taking down that aka I'm protecting myself. So of course you might feel it for the first time. That's okay. That's okay. Except I kind of get the idea that you might be using acceptance like a pill when you say, when I accept, I feel more anxious. Well, are you trying to use acceptance like a pill? Or are you telling yourself that, okay, if I accept this, it'll go away? Because that's not what acceptance is about. Acceptance is about learning to accept the feelings and see them for what they are. And that way, even if there's there, Dr. Claire Weeks put it, not being so impressed by these symptoms. So acceptance is not like a pill. You don't accept and then hope that the feelings go away. You accept and then you learn to not fear the symptoms by being with them, right? Changing our relationship. That's a good one. I've always liked it. I've always liked that analogy. Changing, I don't even know if that's really what you would call an analogy, but changing our relationship with the feelings. Then it's a perfect chance, Donovan. It's a perfect chance to know and practice what you already know to be true, right? It's the perfect chance to continue changing your relationship towards these symptoms so that you can drop the second fear towards them, right? Perfect chance to continue to drop that second fear. You know what? Let's do something. Let's do something different. Let's pull up some Dr. Claire Weeks quotes. We got a whole list here. Let's just go through the list here. Oops, I accidentally clicked on something. When a person is constantly sensitized, he is afraid of the state he is in. Okay, and that is being nervously ill. So if you're afraid of the state that you're in, this is what causes constant sensitization. How do you become unafraid of the state that you're in? Allowing it to be and changing your relationship towards it. Starting to see it for what it is instead of the repeated horror stories that you tell yourself about it, right? Right? I love that quote. That's an excellent quote. When a person is constantly sensitized, he is afraid of the state he is in. So, how do we become unafraid of the state that we are in? That is the question. So, to become unafraid of the state that we're in, we need to start to allow ourselves to feel the state that we're in and change our relationship towards it. This means to stop entertaining the fearful thoughts about it, to stop telling the horror stories about it, and really start to feel it and allow yourself to change your relationship towards it, right? This is how you ultimately drop that second fear. And like the title of this stream says, you will be tempted to fall back on your old bad habits of entertaining fearful thoughts about it, of entertaining fearful thoughts in general, of telling yourself horror stories. You will be very tempted. But if we want to become unafraid of the state that we're in so that the nerves can heal, we have to start to let these fearful thoughts be, stop touching them, and start to change our relationship towards our symptoms. Excellent. Love it. Dr. Claire Weeks, what an OG. What an OG. All right. All right. Oh man, that feels like forever ago, Donovan. You've been here for a while, man. Funny thing about that whole bathroom renovation project, now I need to fix the toilet, so it's completely unusable at the moment. Again, we've read this quote about 17 times today, but it's on the list, so we're going to read it again. Sensitization alone is not enough because without fear, a body will quickly repair its sensitized state. So if you're afraid of the state you're in, this is the problem. So leave the negative thoughts alone, the fearful thoughts alone, the horror stories. Stop telling yourself horror stories and start to change your relationship towards these symptoms to where there's not so much fear involved and the body will start to repair itself. So excellent. Dr. Claire Weeks, man, what a G. All right. The great majority, oh my God, this is a good one. The great majority of my nervously ill patients have been made ill and kept ill because of the way they feel, because of fear of what they think might happen next. So the key part of that quote is the ending there, because of fear of what they think might happen next. So you can always cope, right? You can always cope and get by with your current feelings. But a lot of the times we tell ourselves horror stories and very fearful thoughts. We entertain very fearful thoughts of what might happen next, right? And for most people, this is the case. So again, it comes back all to the same thing. I know we're all over the place here, but it comes back to the same thing. You're afraid of the state you're in. You're entertaining fearful negative thoughts about this or about that to try to avoid this or that. You're telling yourself horror stories. But as Dr. Claire Weeks plainly says right here, most of my patients, okay, a great majority of my nervously ill patients are ill and kept ill, okay, because of fear of what they might think, of fear of what they think might happen next. I'm getting tongue-tied, so there you go. Changing that relationship towards the symptoms. All right, let's see. Um, okay, another quote here by Dr. Claire Weeks. Putting up with, okay, means withdrawing from panic in panic, adding panic to panic, hoping that panic will go away quickly and not come back. It means avoiding places and people that bring on panic. So there you go, right there's an answer to the question. So it means avoiding people and places that bring on panic. So you're constantly in your mind fighting fearful thoughts because you don't want to be put in a certain situation or have a certain something happen because you're afraid that it might bring on panic, right? So again, for most people, that is the root cause, panic and anxiety symptoms, even if they're trying to fight off thoughts about, like Dan said, being afraid of their boss. If you're honest with yourself, it's very possible that that could be the reason you're trying to fight off that fearful thought is because you're hoping, okay, that by avoiding people and places or situations that bring on panic, you're trying to avoid that, right? So That's kind of the point we made earlier. So a lot of people, or some people might say, well, my fearful thoughts are not even based on anxiety and panic. But if we're honest with ourselves, and I'm not saying for everybody, but for most people, are you trying to fight these fearful negative thoughts because you're afraid that people, places, or situations might bring on panic or anxiety, right? So if I'm fighting a negative, fearful thought about, oh God, I hope this doesn't happen in the future. I mean, yeah, there's no denying that there might be shitty situations in life, but is there a hint of some underlying fear that it'll also bring on anxiety and panic, and that's what I'm really afraid of, right? So again, got to be honest with yourself. All right, let's see. I like how she really does pretty much touch on everything. Always loved Dr. Claire Weeks. Changing your relationship towards these feelings. So putting up with means withdrawing from panic in panic, adding panic to panic, hoping that panic will go away quickly and not come back. It means avoiding people and places and situations that bring on panic, right? So you could be fighting a negative, fearful thought about not wanting a certain something to happen in the future. Okay. And that's not to say that, yes, you don't want thing to happen because thing is shitty. Okay, I get that. Yeah, that's possible. You probably don't want thing to happen because certain thing is shitty. But at the same time, is there an underlying fear that you're afraid if thing does happen, it'll bring on panic, right? So you keep avoiding people, places, and situations that bring on panic. So are you really so much afraid of certain thing happening, or are you really afraid of the symptoms that might happen as a result of thing happening, right? So we were talking about earlier, that can be your fear of anxiety and panic can be the root cause behind all of your fears that you're trying to fight off. But that's something you just have to be honest with yourself about. It's something I can't really answer for you. Let's see. I'm sorry I don't have comments pulled up at the moment because I'm scrolling these quotes, but these are beautiful. I'm no longer sensitized, Donovan, but anxiety is still going to be a part of life. So a lot of people, they see people that, like Clear Weeks, for example, that make videos or write books on acceptance, whatever the case may be, on anxiety, and they think that you somehow become superhuman after you heal. Once you're out of the anxiety state, right, and once you're desensitized, and once the nerves start to return to normal, you're still going to have negative thoughts from time to time. They probably won't be anxiety or panic related, but as a human being, you're going to have negative thoughts from time to time where you can still use the advice. You don't have to entertain them, right? And as a human being, you're still going to have feelings of nervousness, for example, from time to time. But it's no longer a problem. You're no longer sensitized. You're back to quote unquote normal levels of nervousness or negative thoughts. You get what I'm getting at. So, but that's why I always like to say, the two main keys: changing a relationship towards symptoms, not entertaining horror stories in the mind. A beautiful practice, no matter if you're sensitized or not sensitized. It's a beautiful practice regardless. It means avoiding people, places, and situations that bring on panic. So, a lot of times, and I probably will end up dedicating an entire stream to this point because it's a very good point to bring to people's attention. A lot of times, when we entertain or try to fight off negative thoughts because we don't want a certain thing to happen in our future or whatever, it's not so much about the certain thing. It's more or less because we're afraid of the way it's going to make us feel. We're afraid of the anxiety and panic. For most people, I would say for a majority of people, that root cause, that root fear is still their fear of anxiety and panic symptoms, right? And apparently Dr. Clear Weeks realized that as well when she said that. So that makes it a little bit easier on people. That makes it a little bit more simple when they start to realize, hey, am I really trying to avoid these certain things from happening in my head because I don't want these certain things to happen? Or am I trying to fight these fearful thoughts because at the end of the day, if I boil it down, it's because I'm afraid they might cause anxiety and panic if they do happen? And if you're honest with yourself, for a lot of people, it is because if you boil it down, you're still afraid of anxiety and panic being the result of said thing or said fear happening, right? So if you boil it down, your root fear is still fear of anxiety and panic symptoms, which you can start to change with enough practice. Yeah, someone who overstudies gets tired. That's an excellent point, face paint. And like we said, like we just said just now with your root fear. I mean, there's a million reasons why entertaining these thoughts is pointless anyway. Well, that's a good point, Arnold, and that's what we're trying to get people to realize. We're trying to get people to realize that these feelings don't need to be villainized, and when they are villainized, it adds to a lot of second fear, as Dr. Claire Weeks puts it, and this is when it becomes a problem because this is when tired nerves start to come into play. Absolutely, Craig. If you spend too much up time in the head, if you spend too much time obsessing, you will start to feel a bit of brain fog, right? I mean, you got to think about it. Your brain is like a muscle, so if you're constantly working it out, man, you're gonna get tired, right? So it's completely normal. Completely normal. So it's not so much that you fear this or fear that, and again, that's why it's pointless to entertain fearful thoughts anyway. You fear feeling a certain way. So we've got to get over the fear of these feelings. And how do we do that? With panic and acceptance, starting to change our relationship towards them. Do you think you would be able to accept and carry on normally? I don't fear panic and anxiety symptoms, right? I did. Once upon a time, I absolutely did. In fact, I probably feared panic and anxiety symptoms more than anybody else in this stream at one point in time, right? But when you start to truly accept and let go of your fearful beliefs about these symptoms and you start to allow yourself to feel them, you too will get to the point where it doesn't matter if panic comes on. And that's what Claire Weeks meant by not being so impressed by these symptoms, getting to the point where it doesn't matter. I believe she said those words directly. Getting to the point where it doesn't matter if the feelings come on, right? And this is the point we need you to get to by allowing yourself to feel and changing your relationship towards these symptoms so that you stop adding second fear. Because second fear is when it becomes a true problem. It's when the nerves start to break down, right? So I used to see my panic attacks as a sign that I was going crazy. And if I had a brush of panic these days, I would see it as adrenaline in the body. I would see it for what it is. I would see it for energy in the body. It wouldn't become a problem. It would leave as quickly as it came, right? And that's what Dr. Claire Weeks meant by sensitization is not enough. Without fear, a body can quickly repair itself. So fear is all about false beliefs that you hold. And as soon as we start to break those false beliefs down by accepting our feelings and changing our relationship towards them, we can get out of the sensitized state. And I don't know if you were asking me that question or not, Nico, but still a good question, so I answered it anyway. Yeah, see again, Arnold, the last part of your question there. Something will happen and you'll not be able to handle it. So you see the last part of your question there. That is your false belief. That is your driving fear that you can't handle your feelings, right? And so that keeps you in a very stressed out place because let's face it, that's a very stressful fear to have. So in order to change that false belief, you got to start to change your relationship towards these feelings. Allow yourself to experience them and start to instead of seeing them as this big bad villain, you start to allow yourself to feel them and you start to lose your fear of them, right? And then at that point, bada bing, bada boom, baby, you start to take that stress off the nervous system and the body can get to work on healing. No, Donovan. If you could go crazy from anxiety alone, man, I would have been in a straitjacket. I would have been in a straitjacket, let me tell you. Jesus Christ. Oh, just thinking about how much stress I put on my nerves with all of my second fear. I was to the extreme, man. You couldn't put any more second fear on the nerves than I did, let me tell you. So if it was possible to go crazy from the anxiety alone, I would have been the first person in a straitjacket. I'll tell you that, because there was no, God forbid, I put the most second fear on my nerves than it was insane. It was constant second fear, dude. Constant second fear. So if going crazy from that was possible, I would have went crazy a long time ago, right? During my journey, especially at first when I wasn't using acceptance, obviously, right? Dollar, dollar, dollar is what I need. Hey, Will, thank you so much. I know you guys couldn't hear that because I still haven't set up my audio input capture. But thank you so much, Will, for that $40 tip, dude. Can we give a round of applause to Will in the chat, please? Round of applause for my buddy Will. Thank you, dude. That was huge. Thank you, man. Thank you, Will. Let's spam that chat and give a big shout out and a big thank you to both who was it today? Craig and Will. Thank you to our tippers. It helps me to be able to do this full time, so we should always show our tippers how grateful we are. They are the reason that we can be here pretty much every day together. So let's give them a big shout out and a big thank you. Let them know how grateful we are. No kidding. I thought I had schizophrenia. Yeah, that's why we try to make it even more simple. Like I know we talk about specific negative thoughts and how they're no good for you, and we go on and we give a million reasons why entertaining them just makes them stronger. Blah blah blah. There's a million reasons to not entertain the thoughts. But let's make it even more simple and let's face the facts. For most people, okay, I'm not going to speak for everyone, but for most people, they're afraid of feeling a certain way. Therefore, they fight every thought because they don't want a certain situation to happen because it might cause them to feel anxiety and panic. So if we break it down as simply as we can break it down, for most people it comes back to the fear of feelings. For most people that is the root cause. For most people that is absolutely the root cause. And that's just one of the million reasons why entertaining your fearful thoughts is going to do you no good. We need to get to that root cause and we need to start to accept and change our relationship towards the symptoms. That way if said things do happen in your life, it's no big deal because as Dr. Claire Weeks says, you're not as impressed by the symptoms. It no longer matters if they come, right? Let's see if I can pull that quote up because it's such a good quote. Um, Dr. Claire Weeks, it no longer matters. I'm sure that's somewhere. Okay, yep, we got it. This is perfect. Where is it? Well, we had it. So here's a cool little quote. So this is an interview with Dr. Claire Weeks. She said, I am aware that many therapists believe there is no permanent cure for nervous illness. When I was on the radio some years ago in New York with a physician and a psychiatrist, the psychiatrist corrected me when I used the word cure. And you said, you mean remission, don't you, Dr. Weeks? We never speak of curing the nervously ill. I told her that I cured far too many nervously ill people to be afraid to use the word. So there you go. I cured far too many nervously ill people to be afraid to use the word. You speak it, girl. All right? You get it, girl. Dr. Claire Weeks, you fucking OG. Let's see. Now, where's the quote that I came here for? To recover, okay, and this is to recover, they must know how to face, accept, and go through panic until it no longer matters. Right? So if you're honest with yourself, you will see that it still very much matters to you. It still very much matters to you if you have anxiety and panic. And this is the second fear. All right, so to lose that second fear and to make it to where it no longer matters, we'd stop trying to do anything with the thoughts because they're unimportant and not the problem anyway, right? One of many reasons. And we start to change our relationship towards these symptoms and feelings until it no longer matters. Until it no longer matters. Yeah, I look like a crackhead. Thought I need to change my diet, right? I look like a total crackhead in my sensitization days. Don't worry. Don't worry, you're not alone there. I'm gonna drop that actually in the chat. Let's see. Right there. So dropping that second fear, dropping that root fear right there. I remember a pretty profound, okay. And yeah, I agree with chat. If you feel like you need to see a doctor, absolutely. Get everything kind of ruled out there. Um, if you haven't been to a doctor, if you haven't gotten cleared, if you haven't got, all these other possibilities or whatever thoughts, that you have ruled out as a possibility, then go do that if you can go do that, obviously. Go do that if you can go do that, obviously. That's why I always tell people, I'm here to teach you about a sensitized nervous system, but if you're worried that it might be this or it might be that, go see a doctor. But anyway, so I remember a very profound moment in my journey to recovery where I spent a lot of my days fighting with every negative intrusive thought you can imagine. Not even negative intrusive thoughts that were aimed at anxiety and panic, so much so, but just all over the board with these negative intrusive thoughts. But then I started to kind of realize that I was arguing with them because I didn't want things to happen that might cause my anxiety and panic, right? So that's when I kind of realized, okay, so my root fear is really, afraid to feel anxiety and panic. And that's when it really kind of dawned on me that I need to let these thoughts come and cause as much anxiety and panic as they want to, because they're not the problem. My problem is my relationship with my anxiety and panic. And as soon as I start to accept it and reduce the amounts of second fear that I'm adding, right, then I'll start to heal. And I remember on one of my first days, and I believe I just did a stream about this not long ago, on one of my first days where I was going to dedicate to true acceptance and really start to change my relationship towards anxiety and panic, try to get over this root fear of anxiety and panic, I let my thoughts go unchecked for the first time in a long time. And they absolutely did cause feelings of anxiety and near panic, right? They absolutely did. I was no longer fighting with them, but they absolutely did cause feelings of anxiety and near panic. But I realized that if it wasn't for the anxiety and panic, these thoughts wouldn't matter to me. So I really needed to focus on changing my relationship towards the anxiety and panic, as Dr. Claire Weeks calls dropping second fear. And as that quote says right there, to recover, they must know how to face, accept, and go through panic until it no longer matters. So if you're still fighting mentally, chances are you're still afraid of anxiety and panic, right? No matter what it is that you're fighting mentally about. So it really is, guys, about getting over your fear of anxiety and panic. And the only way to really do that is to change your relationship with it. And to change your relationship with it, you got to be willing to feel it. And while you're actively feeling it, right, you start to see it in a new light instead of running from it. So I remember having that realization And like I said, I think we did a whole entire stream on that not long ago. So it's just a good question to ask yourself, why am I fighting with my thoughts? Even my thoughts that are not necessarily aimed at anxiety and panic. Why am I fighting them? Am I fighting them because I'm afraid if said things happens it might cause anxiety and panic? If the answer to that question is yes, then chances are your root fear is that you're still afraid of these feelings. For most people, that is going to be your root fear. But regardless, you can still obviously apply not arguing or fighting with your negative intrusive thoughts. Oh, absolutely, face paint, absolutely. I finally just let it all in, and they got way worse. So, it's like Arnold was saying earlier. If I accept my anxiety and thoughts, it seems to get worse. It's because you're finally starting to let go of that control, and that can feel a bit scary to people, right? But this is the way that you eventually drop second fear, and you eventually get to the point where, like Dr. Clearweek says, that it no longer matters. And then when it no longer matters, you are on your way. You are on your way. It was not scary anymore. Yeah, so you'll eventually reach that point, Arnold. I know it feels like a leap of faith, and I know it feels a bit scary to do that. But when you drop that resistance and you're finally allowing yourself to feel, you will get to that point eventually. As Dr. Claire Weeks says, you get to the point where it no longer matters, and this is where you're home free at this point. It's just a matter of time at this point. So for most people, that root fear, the reason they even argue with their thoughts to begin with is because deep down they're still afraid of anxiety and panic. All right, guys. I will be right back. I'm going to. Where's my phone? Oh, is that what fell earlier? That's probably what fell earlier. Yes, that is what fell earlier. Okay. All right, guys. I will be right back. All right, I'm back. Craig says, is there an easier way to heal anxiety without suffering so much? So, the whole point of healing anxiety is realizing that we're causing 99.9% of that suffering, right? With that second fear, what Dr. Claire Weeks calls second fear. So, changing your relationship towards those symptoms, which I know you feel very crappy. Do not get me wrong, but you understand that there is this root fear of your feelings, right? So, it's okay to feel crappy. Don't get me wrong, chat. I am not telling you that it's not okay to feel crappy. It is okay to feel crappy. It is okay to feel bad. It is okay to feel shitty. However, we need to drop the fear of feeling shitty. Right? That's probably the most straightforward way I can put that. So you have to say to yourself, you know what? I'm experiencing symptoms of a tired nervous system and it feels shitty. But you also know what? I'm not adding fear to it. I'm no longer afraid of it. See, this is the key difference. This is the key difference, chat, between a person who remains sensitized and a person who starts to heal. The person who starts to heal says to themselves, you know what? I'm going to allow myself to feel shitty, but I'm no longer adding fear to it. I'm going to allow myself to feel shitty, but there's no longer any fear involved. As Dr. Claire Weeks says, you get to the point where it no longer matters. So to drop those horror stories, right? Sorry about that, chat. I had to place an order for food because I'm starving. I used your lunch money, Craig. I appreciate it. So removing the fear from the sensitized state, and the fear is simply the thoughts, the horror stories that we entertain about the sensitized state. That's the fear. The horror stories and the thoughts that we entertain about the sensitized state. I hope you didn't send me your lunch money, Craig. I hope you didn't send me your lunch money. What I'm basically saying is I hope you still got money for yourself. Don't ever tip unless you've got plenty of money for yourself, right? Right? And that applies to everybody in chat. Always take care of yourself first. Okay, okay, I got you. I got you. After I really accepted my panic attacks, ended it within 2 weeks. My crazy thoughts stopped being so strong, but I felt absolutely hell during it. It was hard, but I already felt so horrible. Exactly. So a lot of people, they start to accept, and it makes it feel tougher because they're dropping their coping methods and they're starting to change their relationship towards anxiety. But the longer you do this, the longer you'll start to drop this fear, this second fear, right? All right, cool, Craig. As long as you have money for yourself, you guys take care of yourselves first. Lying down in my bed watching this on my TV. Awesome. Got me on the big screen. Second fear caused all my suffering, and if you want it bad enough, you'll walk through the crap feelings to get out because you're suffering so bad as nothing to lose. Yeah, yeah. Second fear. Dr. Claire Weeks realized second fear was the culprit here, changing your relationship towards anxiety, because as she plainly says, sensitization is not enough. Without fear, a body can begin to repair itself. So it's all about allowing yourself to feel and changing a relationship towards these symptoms, a relationship that no longer involves so much fear so that your body can begin to heal. All right, I'm going to crack open a Dr. Pepper here. Wasn't it Dan who said he started drinking caffeine again? Hey, this one's for you, Dan. We're gonna crack open this Dr. Pepper for Dan. Oh, so good. Oh, so good. Yeah, the same thing applies, Ford. It doesn't matter if you're dealing with panic attacks. I made the example earlier that, ironically enough, as much as I feared panic, which eventually led me to be sensitized because I thought I was going crazy, ironically enough, I didn't have panic during, or that often during sensitization, and that's the case for most people. But there's still a fear of the high anxiety, right? So it's all more or less the same. It is the same. What you order? I ordered a Philly cheesesteak with onions, green pepper, and an order of garlic cheese bread and a slice of chocolate pie, which would not have happened if it wasn't for you lovely tippers today, because let's face it, ordering out cost a little bit of money. So I appreciate it, guys. Thank you for feeding me a delicious meal today. Well, this one's for you, Dan. I'm drinking this Dr. Pepper for you, man. Dan the man. I like how I like how face paint, which by the way, face paint always makes excellent comments. I like how she points out that when you first start to accept, it might feel a lot like hell. It's because you're dropping your coping methods and your protective battling that you've been doing for so much, for so long. So it might feel a little bit like hell, but what do you have to lose? She also made that point. What do you have to lose? You already feel like hell. You might as well go about it the right way and start to drop the fear of these feelings and allow yourself to feel them, right? Might as well. That's a good point to make. $15 tip? Did I miss a... Oh, no, I get what you're saying. Okay, okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah, and that's a good point too, face paint. I mean, the only reason that you argue with your negative, crazy, intrusive thoughts anyway, even if they're not so much directed at anxiety and panic itself, most of the time, if you look underneath that, if you peek under the carpet there, you're only doing that because you're afraid you might get anxiety and panic as a result of these things happening. So, still, at the end of the day, you still need to drop your fear of anxiety and panic, as Dr. Claire Weeks calls second fear, right? So you might be bluffed into arguing with your negative thoughts because you think, well, they're not about anxiety and panic, so I can argue with them. But no, if you look under the carpet, if you peek under the bed there, you might see that you only do that because you're afraid these things might happen because you're afraid they might make you feel anxious or panicky. So if you look under the bed, your root fear is that you're still afraid of anxiety and panic symptoms, and this is what needs to change, as Dr. Claire Weeks says, getting to the point where it no longer matters. And you can only really get to that point if you feel them, which, again, like, Face Paint said, is not, it's not the easiest practice in the world to dedicate to at first, but at the same time, you already don't feel that great, so you already don't feel that great, to say the least, so why not? Why not work on changing your relationship towards these feelings? Alright guys, we've been streaming for about an hour and a half now, so I'm going to go ahead and call it here. I appreciate all of you beautiful people for being here today. I really, really do. I love you guys. We're so close to 10K. Thank you guys so much for that. And I will see you in the next stream and or video and maybe on the Discord. I love you guys. If you haven't already, subscribe. We'd love to hang out with you in the